Hello, and thank you to everyone for joining today's exclusive Family Office Network's webinar series featuring 1212 Ventures. 1212 Ventures is a cannabis-focused venture capital investment fund. Their current offering is proposed built to secure the largest ownership position in a specific cannabis company, Cookies. And they can only achieve this in two ways. One, direct investment in Cookies, and two, investment in Cookies-related brands and businesses. Starting off the presentation is Dean Porter. Dean Porter is a special advisor on the cannabis industry to the Family Office Networks. He is the managing partner of Porter Partners and has a long career in encompassing law, investment banking, and worked with the John Deere Family Office in New York. At the end of today's presentation, we will have plenty of time for Q&A, and we encourage your questions. Please use your questions chat option on the right side of your screen to send over any questions so we can answer them accordingly. Dean, I'm going to let you start us off.
Okay, thank you, Lee and Matt. Our job as special advisor to FON is to vet private investment opportunities in the cannabis space. Today's presentation is about 1212 Ventures, which is a unique fund with a focus on cookies, which may very well be the next cannabis unicorn. We at Porter & Partners believe this opportunity to be worthy of your consideration. At this time, I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Matt.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Dean. And just confirming, Lindsay, you can see my screen? Ready to dive?
Yes, that's great, Matt, and I can hear you perfect.
Great. Well, first and foremost, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Matt Barron. I'm the managing partner of 1212 Ventures. We'll start with just some investment highlights. Lindsay and Dean both mentioned this, but 1212 Ventures offers the exclusive opportunity to invest in cookies and cookies-related businesses. We'll dive into the brand in more detail, but from where we sit, Cookies is the strongest, most influential brand in cannabis in the world. And we really purpose-built this specific offering to take the largest position in that business. Our differentiators relative to the rest of the market are that we're brands focused. We've been investing in cannabis since 2016. We have long maintained a thesis that brands carry the greatest opportunity for value creation and returns long-term within this industry. We take a very concentrated approach to how we invest. We strive to identify breakaway winners and then allocate significant amounts of capital behind them. Our fund is transparent. Our investors like that they know where their money is going. There is no gap between us raising capital and then going out to deal hunt for multiple years. Our portfolio is set. We've also made 3 investments to date. Each of those investments are already on a very high growth trajectory right now. Investors coming in today and tomorrow, in the very near term, will participate in those past investments at the same valuations that we first invested. We have not yet marked up our portfolio. The obligatory why invest in cannabis slide, it's a big industry and it's getting bigger. There is a one-time opportunity to invest in the space before broader federal legalization, which we believe is an inevitability at this point. Revenues within the industry exceeded $20 billion in 2020. They're rapidly accelerating, should be approaching $60 billion over the next 5-ish years. The United States is today the largest legal market in the world. California is dominant, both from a consumer and revenue generation perspective, as well as a center of culture for the industry. Strongest brands in cannabis have largely come out of California. Cookies is the #1 flower brand in the market. We believe that flower drives the buying decisions across all other categories, which is why we place such a heavy emphasis on that subcategory within the space. Beyond being just the #1 flower brand by revenues in the state, Cookies also has the largest retail footprint in California, and we'll go into why that is particularly unique. Cookies itself, as we said at the beginning, we believe that it's the #1 brand in cannabis in the world. Cookies was founded in 2009 by an individual named Gilbert Milam Jr. Gil is better known by his stage name Berner. In 2009, Berner was working as a bud tender in a medical dispensary, and he had a very basic observation in San Francisco. And that was that different people with different conditions had different reactions to different strains of cannabis. But everything arrived at his legal medical dispensary in the same Ziploc bags and plastic containers, right? There was no differentiation on a product by product basis other than gimmicky, inconsistent strain names and THC content. Berner had a vision that cannabis would one day look a lot more like wine and spirits, where there was this fundamental difference in the underlying quality of the product themselves, but that ultimately brands would be what people were most passionate about, aggregated around and discussed with their friends. So Berner sought out to build the first brand in cannabis. Berner knew that that fundamental super premium quality needed to be his foundation. So he worked with a breeder in San Francisco named Jai Chang, who came up with the genetic that they thought smelled like Thin Mint cookies, and they called it Girl Scout cookies. And that infamous strain immediately went viral throughout California, across the United States, and internationally. If you walk into a coffee shop in Amsterdam, you'll see cookies all over the menu, right? Knockoffs, fake brands. So the brand today is internationally recognized. It's widely lauded as having the most premium genetics in cannabis. It's dominant in blind taste tests. It's dominant at award shows. Leafly is a very well-known online media company within cannabis, and Leafly has named cookies or one of its sub-brands its top strain of the year each of the last 3 years. The business is profitable, which for those who are familiar with cannabis and the punitive tax structure of the industry right now, given federal illegality, profitability is a very big deal. Significant revenue growth year over year, and we believe extremely well positioned to further gain market share and rapidly accelerate. When Cookies drops new products, I mean, you can see some of the pictures here. When Cookies opens up new stores, when Cookies drops new products, they sell out immediately. People camp out days in advance of store openings. Cookies today has 29 stores. You know, the footnote at the bottom, a recent store opening 2 weeks ago in Sacramento, California. People started camping out Wednesday afternoon for a Saturday opening. That just doesn't happen in cannabis, and we argue it doesn't happen in broader with broader CPG brands either. Part of what makes Cookies special is this unique ability to build a family of brands. You know, from where we sit, right? A great brand is more than just a clever name or a catchy logo. It represents a community of passionate followers, and beyond just having a single brand that has, you know, a hysteria about it, as Cookies does, a family of brands is even better. Over the last 2 years, Cookies has built brands from scratch. Lemonade is one such example. Folks in Los Angeles might have seen a lemonade store in West Hollywood. Folks in Sacramento as well. Another lemonade store is opening up in Oklahoma this weekend. Cookies also acquires brands for zero stock and zero cash. Now, these are existing legacy brands with something particularly special about them. Either it's the genetics, it's the ability to reach a new target market. Cookies brings those brands under the Cookies umbrella without any dilution or cash up front. And Cookies also has a lot of gravity for other partners to launch brands with. Mints was founded with a breeder named Jay Beasy. Powers Up is a breeder named Kenny Powers. You know, these are celebrity breeders who come up with new genetics on a regular basis. It creates this stable of new genetics, of new strains that Cookies can continuously build new brands on top of. Collins Avenue is a collaboration with the rapper Rick Ross. Ooh La La with the supergroup Run the Jewels. Herb is a new collaboration with Damian Marley. All of these brands are launched with $0, zero stock. When we are asked what makes Cookies special, I really attribute it to 3 different components. The first are the genetics, right? As mentioned, Cookies are widely recognized as having the strongest library of genetics in the cannabis space. People covet these strains, they covet the seeds from which the flower is grown. It's just a fundamentally superior product that resonates with a larger berth of the broader market than is typical. Berner himself, when it comes to the marketing side of the business, Berner's a rapper, right? He's a cannabis businessman first and foremost, but he's also a rapper, right? He grew up and built a reputation for himself going to hip hop shows throughout the Bay Area and giving super high quality, super premium Northern California cannabis to the artists and entertainers as a token of appreciation for them visiting his city. As Cookies took off, in the early 2010s, Berner increasingly was only handing out Cookies product. That caught the attention of international super celebrities like Wiz Khalifa, like Lil Wayne, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj. They started rapping about Cookies. Increasingly, Berner started to join them on their albums. Berner has now released 41 different rap albums. Those albums become a very powerful mechanism for telling the Cookies story, for generating organic growth for the brand and for its ancillary businesses as well. It's just a hyper unique differentiator that no other cannabis companies have. And again, it extends the Cookies market share and market recognition, brand recognition, international as well, right? Cookies has fans in Japan, right, in Korea, in Nigeria, throughout all of Europe. It has fans in South America, Costa Rica. It really is the strongest international brand in cannabis. The third pillar of what makes Cookies special from where I sit, why I believe it's such an investable company and a fund's worth of opportunity is created, is because Cookies also deploys a very unique business model. You will often hear about companies that purport to being asset light and capital efficient. Cookies embodies this better than anybody that we've come across. Cookies at its core is a genetics and marketing company, right? Those are its two key value propositions. Cookies outsources its supply chain to third-party partners who are entrusted with the Cookies genetics to grow Cookies weed. They then sell those grown plants to third-party production partners who turn the plants into consumable and packaged goods. And Cookies gets compensated a licensing fee from that transaction. Multi-state operators, the companies that are broadly recognized as industry leaders because they're publicly traded, are all vertically integrated. They 100% own their own supply chains and every inflection point of that supply chain: cultivation, production, distribution, and then retail. Cookies outsources that, right? Cookies essentially rents and is paid to rent other people's supply chain. Cookies also deploys a branded retail concept. 29 stores are open and operational today that we'll delve into in more depth. So this is a intentionally confusing slide, right? This represents a basic supply chain where you have Cookies genetics on the left that get distributed to Cookies' cultivation partners to grow plants. Hero product for Cookies is premium indoor flower, but Cookies also has greenhouse and sun-grown or outdoor cultivation partners. Those plants are grown and consolidated into a limited number of production hubs where those plants are turned into consumable and packaged products. Cookies actually sells its own Cookies branded bags to these production partners to ensure consistency, quality, and legality is strictly adhered to. Those products are then distributed to end retail, right? To dispensaries throughout California and every state that Cookies is operational in. Increasingly, Cookies has accelerated its branded retail strategy. As Cookies was scaling, beginning in 2009 when the brand was, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but it looks like we're stuck on the slide for some reason. That it looks like where it says Cannabis is the #1 brand in cannabis. As like maybe there's like a concert photo.
Yep, interesting.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's updating on my side. No problem. I appreciate the heads up, Lindsay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me see. I'm getting a spinning flywheel at the moment.
It's probably about slide 4, it seems like.
Yeah, it's flywheel spinning on my side. So I'll keep talking, and if we can get the presentation back up.
And to all of our attendees, with that said, we can always make sure that we send this out to you after the presentation as well. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Lindsay. So as you know, as Berner was founding Cookies 2009, it started to get this groundswell of support and rapidly expand right throughout dispensaries in California. In 2019, a group of dispensary owners in Los Angeles said, look, you Cookies have the most expensive products in our store. We have the best margins on those products, and they sell out the fastest, right? This is the holy trinity of retail, right? What do we need to do to get more inventory? And at that point in time, Cookies decided to pilot a branded retail strategy with 4 non-negotiables. And these non-negotiables are that Cookies was willing to extend its outsourced supply chain, right? Cookies spends $0 on CapEx, no investment into hard assets. Cookies saw an opportunity to extend that business model into end retail, whereby Cookies could vet and identify dispensary partners who either owned an open and operational dispensary that the partner would pay out of pocket to convert, or they identified license holders with access to prime real estate to open up a net new branded store. So the first of the non-negotiables is Cookies spends $0 to open up a branded store, right? The owner operator of the license pays out of pocket for that conversion. That said, Cookies controls the architectural design and the general contractor for that work. Cookies uses the same architectural design firm as brands like Supreme, Louis Vuitton, Tiffany & Co. They're called Brinkworth, and they're out of London. Really high-end, high-fidelity aesthetic and design. The second of the non-negotiables is that in exchange for this deployment of capital, Cookies guarantees to these owner-operators, to these dispensary partners, the right to purchase up to half of their store worth of Cookies products. So pre-conversion, these store owners were able to secure maybe 2 or 3% of their store worth of Cookies products. Because of their deployment of capital to convert their store to a Cookies branded store, they now get access to up to half of their store worth of product. I'm originally from Chicago. I live out in Northern California now, but it's the equivalent to having a flip-flop store all of a sudden be able to sell Jordan sneakers, right? It's just a markedly different product SKU set, and that has significant impacts on revenues. The third of these non-negotiables for these branded stores is that the owner-operators have to pay Cookies a monthly royalty. That monthly royalty applies to the sales of all Cookies products and also to the sale of all non-Cookies products. So you can picture a world in which Cookies now has 2 revenue streams, right? It has the licensing fee derived from the transaction between cultivation partners and production partners. And this branded retail strategy introduces a secondary revenue stream as well, right? The royalties from the sales in the Cookies branded stores. There is no additive cost to Cookies to route Cookies products to these Cookies branded stores. So every time a new store opens, right, Cookies will open about 1 store every 7 days in 2021. That introduces that royalty revenue that essentially just drops to the bottom line. So Cookies is profitable today and getting more profitable every single week because those royalty revenues don't carry any additive costs to the brand. It's a very, very powerful model. The fourth of the non-negotiables is that Cookies maintains an option to buy out the owner-operators of the stores at any point in the future for whatever fair market value is at that point in time. So Cookies will have a broker who sets a price based off of in-market transactions and comps. The owner-operator will have a broker who does the same. If those prices are less than 10% apart, it's the mean average of the two. If they're greater than 10% apart, a mutually agreed upon third party sets the price. So the business model allows Cookies to grow very big, very fast, while minimizing its spend. Right? Cookies in the last 2.5 years has only spent $23 million. Right? That money is what these big vertically integrated multi-state operators will often spend in a single month. That's why we think that this asset-light, capital-efficient model just stands in stark contrast to the rest of the market. Right? There's no other entity that can pull off that model. No other business is executing in a similar fashion as Cookies is. As Cookies builds out this large portfolio of real estate assets, of dispensary assets that it has options on, we think that that ultimately increases the value of the business itself, right? Those options are valuable. The business has expanded now into 16 states and 4.5 countries. Cookies currently has dispensaries open in 6 US states, is in production in 16 US states and Puerto Rico, and is also in production in Canada. Cookies has branded storefronts in Israel. So Cookies has a branded pharmacy in Israel. Cookies' partners in Israel identified a bit of a loophole whereby pharmacies, it's a medical only market in Israel, whereby pharmacies can carry a brand and only sell one type of medicine, that being cannabis. So Cookies has a branded dispensary in Tel Aviv, and we'll have 3 more of those this year. And those are all expected to happen by Q2, early Q3 at the latest. Cookies' expansion is happening very, very quickly. It's also in Spain. Cookies has a social club in Barcelona. A social club is where you can purchase and consume cannabis legally. Cannabis is not yet federally legal in Spain, so social clubs are tolerated. Cookies also has a clothing store in Barcelona in the Gothic Quarter. It's a beautiful, beautiful store. The clothing business is separately owned and operated, different cap table, different ownership group from the cannabis business, and we'll speak about that in more detail here momentarily. The half country that I mentioned earlier is Holland. So the Netherlands announced in June that for the first time they would put together a government-sponsored legal cannabis industry. So if you've been to Amsterdam, the famed coffee shops are tolerated but are not legal. They're allowed to sell to consumers. They're allowed to keep limited inventory on premise, but cultivation, production, and distribution is illegal in the country. In June of 2020, the government said that they would pilot a new industry and they would issue 10 licenses to cannabis companies as part of the pilot. That immediately became the most internationally competitive market and application process. One of our other portfolio companies, a company called Cookies Retail, which essentially serves as Cookies' #1 franchisee, won one of those 10 licenses and is in the process of breaking ground on that facility so that it can provide legal and legit Cookies genetics to the Holland market. Obviously a part of the European Union. It's a very, very big deal to be in possession of one of those licenses. Within the United States, California is the biggest market by far and away. We are very excited about Florida. Florida is a very unique market. The state only issued 22 licenses to cannabis companies. To do anything in Florida, you have to be in possession of one of those 22 licenses. But once you are in possession of one of those licenses, it allows you to do anything that you want, including opening an unlimited number of dispensaries. Cookies Retail, again, our one of our portfolio companies that currently owns 9 Cookies branded stores. They secured a Florida license last year and just broke ground on their facility 2 weeks ago. So we're very excited about Florida. Inherent in this model that Cookies employs is Cookies doesn't have to spend any money to enter a new market, right? Cookies doesn't have to buy an existing business. It doesn't have to buy an existing brand or license. It partners with the owner operators of these cultivation, production, and distribution entities. And then it identifies the existing license holders of dispensaries. None of that requires Cookies to deploy any capital into its supply chain, right? It just draws revenues from its wholesale licensing fees and its branded dispensaries. The 2 people that are running Cookies from a senior leadership perspective, Berner remains the CEO and founder. Berner, the easiest equivalency I can offer for Berner is he's just a master sommelier of cannabis. You could put 50 products on a table and have him blind taste test. He'd get the majority of them just by looking at the flower itself. And once consuming, he'd be able to tell you the lineage, what the brand, what the strain name is, and what its lineage is, right? The mom and the father, the male, the mother and father plants from which that genetic came from. So Berner really focuses on genetics, on marketing, right? Berner is a hype machine. He has the loudest microphone in cannabis. High Times Magazine refers to him as the emperor of cannabis. He is a penultimate weed celebrity. Berner also focuses on collaborations, right? So identifying new individuals, artists, entertainers to do collaborations with. You might have seen on Instagram, if you're familiar with Cookies or with Berner, about the Snoop Dogg collaboration. That's one that we're very excited about. Snoop Dogg has long pursued something to do with Berner and with Cookies, and they're going to launch a branded product together using Grandiflora genetics. Everything with Cookies starts with these unique proprietary strains, differentiated, authentic genetics. So it's a model that we're very excited about. As Berner was accelerating Cookies' growth, he knew that he needed some outside support, and Parker Burling was the first person that Berner really trusted to caretake Cookies and to caretake his vision. Parker Burling joined in 2018 as president of Cookies. He was Berner's first official hire. Parker Burling serves as the president of Cookies and is responsible for corporate infrastructure. Everybody at the company reports to Parker. Supply chain partnerships. Parker is maniacally focused on expanding Cookies' network of partners so they can continue to grow and scale. And then business development strategy, right? Prioritizing new market entry. Parker's background is Silicon Valley. He was with a company called Responsus that he quickly ascended to, that ultimately went public before being bought private by Oracle. Parker served as the top product guy at Oracle for a couple of years, and then left Oracle to join a company called Heighten that he and his 3 partners ultimately sold to Microsoft. In parallel to these Silicon Valley pursuits, Parker became increasingly excited, enthusiastic about the cannabis vertical. He started off with a small project up in Humboldt County. He later launched our predecessor fund that invested in 10 companies across the cannabis supply chain. The 9th and 10th of those investments were Lemonade, the sativa focused brand, kind of the Sprite to Cookies is Coca-Cola, and then ultimately Cookies itself, right? The anchor brand of the cannabis industry, the anchor brand within our portfolio. We ultimately believe that Cookies is the most investable opportunity in cannabis. We also believe that Cookies has created an immensely powerful growth platform upon which other brands and businesses can be launched from scratch, brought under the Cookies umbrella, or invested in a creative way to Cookies, the mothership. So we have made 3 investments to date. Investors who join us now are still participating in those past investments. at their original investment valuations. We've not yet marked anything up. Can attribute that to COVID. We've invested in Cookies itself. And Cookies has about half of our invested capital to date. We invested in Cookies Retail. Again, think of Cookies Retail as Cookies' #1 franchisee of its stores. They own 9 of the 29 Cookies branded stores that are currently open and operational and are on schedule to grow significantly this year and next. We also invested in Backbone. Backbone is a supply chain technology company that we're very excited about. Backbone was founded by an individual named Rajesh Chandran. Rajesh has had 6 or 7 successful exits. He sold his last company to LinkedIn. Before that, he founded NetSuite with Evan Goldberg, sold that to Oracle. Rajesh was the head of all of analytics for Oracle. He sold a finance company to Even Financial. Rajesh's MO is to identify overwhelming amounts of data, derive actionable insights from that data, and sell that to customers who are dependent upon it. Backbone focuses on the middle of the supply chain and then has a platform that allows other supply chain companies and technologies to integrate. So you can purchase Backbone and integrate on Metric. You can purchase Backbone and integrate with Sage for finance and accounting purposes. You can purchase Backbone and integrate for all your distribution needs. Backbone has never lost a customer. They have over 80 customers today. They're in cannabis, they're in hemp, and looking at other complex supply chain based verticals to continue to scale the business. Very excited about Rajesh and what his team is doing. The CEO, Dr. Peter Hewson, was a rocket scientist at NASA before finally giving in to his passion for cannabis and joining the Backbone team. We are a VC fund, it's standard economics. And with that, Lindsay, I really wanted to save ample time for questions and answers. Happy to have follow-on conversations with folks individually to delve deeper into what we are doing, what our focus, what our thesis is, and why we believe we've got a competitive advantage to deliver market best returns to our investors. Thanks everybody for your time.
Matt, thank you so much for that high-level overview. Yes, jumping over to Q&A. And hi, Dean, we see you now. Welcome. Jumping over to Q&A, again, encouraging questions. We do apologize if the slides were stuck on your end, so Matt will make sure that we all get everyone the full slide deck. But Matt, I'm just going to jump right into it here. First question, and I know you touched on this already, but if you can elaborate again for us on what makes Cookies special. I think this is a really imperative thing for everyone to understand.
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. I think cannabis is fundamentally an agricultural commodity, right? You can buy oranges, you can buy lettuce, and there's not particularly differentiated brands within that world. Where Cookies is different is that every one of Cookies' products come from its own proprietary genetics, right? So Cookies has a stable of breeders who are involved in a process called pheno-hunting, whereby they take female cannabis plants, they take male cannabis plants, they cross them. The female gets pregnant with 100 children of the two. You grow all 100 of those seeds and you slowly cull them down until you identify that 2, maybe 3 plants that reflect the best characteristics of mom and dad. Once those genetics get stabilized, vetted for flower, for the look of the flower, the terpene profiles, the symmetry of the flowers, and ultimately the yield. Those genetics get stabilized, and then they get mass propagated at Cookies' nursery, and in partnership with Cookies' genetics partner, a group called Conception Nursery, led by Kevin Brooks out of Sacramento, which is a fantastic partner to Cookies, helping stabilize genetics. So, when people say, when you go into a cannabis store, the vast majority of products that you buy are purchased wholesale from the open market and bagged in different, and just simply bagged by different companies, right? Their only difference is their brand name, the aesthetic, and kind of the market segment that they're trying to appeal to. Cookies is just a fundamentally different product, right? It is its own cannabis. It is its own varietals, and that's a huge difference relative to the vast majority of the market. You then weave in, some of the aesthetics, the qualitative aspects of cookies, and that's what breeds this maniacal fandom, right? I mean, Cookies opened its first store outside of California in Detroit, Michigan, in January of 2020, and the first people got in line the day before in below freezing temperatures. There were so many people camping out for Cookies that the company got a wedding tent and space heaters to cover the bodies, right? That just doesn't happen, right? And it's a product quality differentiation, and it's also this, authentic and true commitment to the cannabis space, to the culture of cannabis, and nobody has that corralled quite like Berner, right? He's just been grinding the line. He was the first, Cookies was really the first brand in cannabis, right? He's been grinding since 2008 to come up with this idea, finally launching it in 2009. And he's involved people throughout that whole process. He's shared his story. He's very engaging, deeply charismatic. He's brilliant, right? A very, very sharp, sophisticated guy. And he cares maniacally about the quality of his plants and the people who consume it.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. Moving right along, next question here from Derek. Let's see. How is Cookies viewing the hemp industry, and is there intent or interest in getting on the ground floor in the not yet legal states?
Good question. So the short answer is, Cookies kind of hero product is its indoor THC flower, right? Always starts at the top shelf, and then it can move those strains into greenhouse-based production, outdoor-based production, and then it moves across shelf into other product categories as well, right? You can, for example, Gary Payton was the #1 cookie strain in California last year. You can now consume Gary Payton-based water-soluble capsules. Cookies does have a CBD line, right? You can buy that at cookies.cbdstore.co. You can buy Cookies' CBD products online. Cookies is launching a CBD flower line as well this year, here in 2021. You might have also seen last year in 2020 that Cookies launched a first of its kind CBD and medicinal mushroom blended health and wellness product. Men's Health just named it the best mushroom blend product for 2020. It's a product that's doing very, very well. It takes non-THC, right, CBD-based genetics with medicinal mushrooms, chaga, reishi, turkey tail for a daytime product. Really nice, energy infusing without the jitteriness of caffeine and coffee. I'm not a coffee guy. And then there's a nighttime product as well to help with sleep. Really nice product. So, to answer Derek's question, Cookies is in the the non-THC category. It does have a very broad set of products that it offers to the market. Cookies is over 1,000 different products and formulations that it sells now. Cookies only is involved in legal markets. It only enters. It only is involved in and enters legal markets. Can't at this point. The business is there's no appetite, interest, involvement in anything that's not yet legal. But
Perfect.
we believe that broader legality is inevitable at this point.
Great, and it sounds like I need to try some of those things. Let's see, moving on, next question. What active role, this is from Jeff, what active role does 1212 play with Cookies? What percentage of Cookies will 1212 own?
Sure, so Berner and Parker are my founding partners in 1212. Our predecessor fund was first money into Cookies, and as we recognized Cookies' rapid acceleration, it just grew markedly faster. It was already the most internationally recognized, influential brand, and in 2020 was really when revenue started to catch up to reputation. And we also we could run a fund that was exclusively dedicated to this ecosystem. So I talk to Parker and Berner very regularly, right? My 1A right now is fundraising for the fund to continue to support this growth. My obligation priority 1B is growth and strategy for Cookies itself. So identifying dispensary partners, identifying cultivation partners, helping to contribute to that function. Cookies obviously has a robust product team with a very deep bench of quality control specialists who manage 100% of Cookies' outsourced partnerships. But 1212 absolutely is involved. Berner and Parker are my business partners in this venture.
Great. Okay, let's see. Is Cookies planning to enter the European medical cannabis market in a serious way, or is its plan in Israel in a way to establish a foothold in Europe until recreational cannabis is legalized, wherever that may be?
Yeah, I love this question. If you listen to Berner, Berner for a decade now has given interviews that cannabis is for, when Berner talks about cannabis and talks about consuming cannabis, it's what are you medicating on, right? Why are you consuming cannabis? Right? What is the clinical utility, medical efficacy that's driving your consumption of the plant? Whether it's de-stressing and relaxation, help with sleeping, nausea, stimulating hunger. Cookies is a recreational brand, but it sells in medical only markets, right? The Cookies 8 Mile, the dispensary in Michigan, that's a medical dispensary. Cookies sells in Maryland right now. It has a medical dispensary in Kalamazoo that's going rec, that just went rec this past week. So the products themselves are consumed for recreational purposes and for medical purposes. Obviously, Cookies has a very important partner in Israel that we are just tremendously grateful for and proud of. That is establishing a foothold in probably the most sophisticated medical market in the world, right? Just decades of research and development in Israel, and obviously with the developments in Holland, right? Cookies has an actual EU government issued license and contract to do business in the European Union. So wherever Cookies products can be consumed legally, Cookies has intents to enter. It's all about finding that right operating partner to continue to execute this asset-light, capital-efficient business model.
Fantastic. So kind of maybe sort of adding on to that a little bit, does Cookies own its own cultivation, production, or dispensaries?
No, so Cookies 100% outsources its supply chain. So
Great.
Cookies has a very rigorous process for evaluating cultivation partners, right? The group that it entrusts its genetics with. And once they're vetted, they receive Cookies genetics to grow Cookies products. But Cookies itself does not own the land or the licenses or the labor or the property, the plants, the equipment. It doesn't pay lawyers or consultants to apply for licenses. It doesn't have a commercial real estate team going out to hunt for retail locations. All of that work is done by its third-party partners. So the business itself, right, part of what I believe makes it so investable is it has this massive international recognition and demand today, and it's able to service that demand at very minimal cost, right? The company just does not burn cash anywhere close to what an entity of its size and scale normally would. And that's not expected to change, right? So that means Cookies is less dependent on future fundraising rounds, right? It's less dilutive to existing investors. And that to me, makes me very excited about the long-term viability of this company as well as our investment. That's why I believe we're particularly well positioned as this industry continues to accelerate to one where brands are the most important.
Definitely. And Matt, can you tell us how Cookies protects its strands and IP?
Yeah, so it's that's a tricky part right now. Patents are issued at a federal level, and cannabis is still federally illegal. So there is work being done to protect. Logos and trademarks are already locked in and patented. From a genetics perspective, there is work being done at the moment on that front. It's impossible to completely protect that, right? I mean, you could use a pair of scissors, clip off a branch of a Cookies plant, put it in your backyard, and it will grow, right? But the analogy that I always use is if somebody ran up to you on the street, telling you that they had a Tiffany diamond in their hand, you would not pay the same price for that diamond as you would if it came in a Robin's eggshell blue bag from a Tiffany & Co. store, right? Louis Vuitton you can find somebody with a picnic blanket in Manhattan and buy a Louis Vuitton bag. That that's not a real bag. It could have been stolen from a Louis Vuitton store, but it's impossible to know for sure. So there is an abundance of knockoffs, right? When you have a brand as powerful and influential as Cookies that sells at the super premium price point, you get knockoffs, right? You get people that launch online websites, e-commerce sites, to try to steal business. But Cookies has a really good relationship with Google, has a really good relationship with Amazon Web Services. As those are identified and spotted, they get shut down immediately.
Okay, great. Next question from Jose. Is Cookie interested in entering the soon emerging Mexican legal market? And if so, how soon if an opportunity is presented?
Yeah, Mexico is going to be the largest legal market in the world as soon as they operationalize. There's some things within the legislation that are still to be determined. Will Mexico allow cultivation in country, or will it import flower from outside of the country? Obviously, there's some concerns with the cartels in Mexico and what their involvement could be. So there's a lot that needs to be figured out in Mexico, but yes, Cookies unequivocally will expect to have a very big presence in Mexico. And one of the things that Cookies can do is it can lead with its clothing label. Cookies SF is the independently owned and operated clothing and accessories label. So there are absolute ambitions and expectations to be in Mexico in short order once it's appropriate to do so.
Fantastic.
And Berner's mother is Mexican, so Berner has a particularly deep affinity and appreciation for Mexico.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to kind of combine these couple of questions together because they're very similar. So with that said, a couple of people, Matt, are asking about the ask, right? So how much has 1212 invested into Cookies to date? What percentage of Cookies does 1212 own? And then the following question is kind of seeking, what are you seeking today? And what would the projected returns be on that? Exit strategy. So you see where I'm going here with the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, happy to share specific numbers with folks on a one-off basis. Folks that are exploring investment opportunities with 1212, getting involved in Cookies and this broader Cookies ecosystem. From an exit perspective, we believe that Cookies has three options for exit, and they're all very, very viable. A1A at this point would be a United States-based IPO. I'm specific about saying United States because you would typically IPO for a very specific reason. More often than not, it's to raise capital, right? It's to raise a windfall of cash to be used to grow scale the business. As mentioned, right, Cookies just does not have the need for a lot of cash. It's able to run a very lean, efficient business. Where Cookies would likely want cash is to take production in-house when it's able to stand up a Cookies own mega facility that can move product over state lines, right? Until that happens, which would obviously be dependent upon at least interstate commerce, if not full broad federal legalization. Cookies just doesn't need to raise a lot of capital to do so. But you can't ignore the public markets, right? There's a lot of value to be gained there. A secondary option for Cookies would be to remain private, right? Be a cash cow that issues dividends to its equity holders, right? Continue to grow and scale the company now, but then ultimately, it's highly profitable in the face of a brutal and punitive tax structure, right? Cannabis companies are essentially taxed on their top line revenues. They're essentially taxed on gross, because federally illegal companies cannot write off any business expenses, right? So taxed on gross, not net. Despite that, Cookies is already profitable. So as we see evolution within cannabis banking laws, we expect the business to be even more profitable and have that much greater ability to issue dividends to investors. I think the third exit opportunity for cookies is to exit to an outside player. You could venture that there are wine and spirits companies, there are broader CPG companies that all see cannabis as a massive growth opportunity for their businesses. And what we have seen, what we believe is the best way to gain market share is via authentic and differentiated brands. You see a lot of companies that struggle to do this, even with big names attached to them. We think that Cookies and its family of brands will be highly, highly attractive for acquisition, for M&A pursuits. So,
great.
Heavily concentrated in Cookies. We've done 2 rounds of investments into the business already. We're anticipating doing more in the very near future. 1 round of financing into Cookies retail, expect to add on there. 1 round of financing into Backbone, expecting to add on there. And then we're targeting Cookies SF, the clothing label. We've got a few other opportunities in the immediate pipeline that we're quite excited about as well.
Great. And yes, to everyone, as Matt mentioned, he would love to speak offline specifically about some more kind of details there as well. Let's see, I think we have time for 1 more question. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time today. Let's see, last question. Can you elaborate on how Cookies recognizes its retail value?
Unequivocally, right? I mean, Cookies post-conversion, dispensaries that were active and operational prior to converting to Cookies typically realize a 300 to 800% increase in revenues post-conversion. That's born out of the fact that Cookies products are just the most expensive products with the best margins that sell the fastest. And they also drives more foot traffic into these stores that has broader lift across the rest of the products that are sold within that dispensary.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. So kind of wrapping up, gentlemen, is there anything that you would like to add before we say our goodbyes today?
Can I jump in here real quickly? Matt, could you share with the people the running revenue run rate right now over the last 12 months?
Nope, we'll do that in private conversations if
okay.
as we diligence process.
Okay.
Is there anything else, Dean?
I would just like to add, we don't have the pitch deck here, so when we finish up, Lindsay will reach out to the participants with contact information, how to reach me and Matt, and that we'll arrange to get more information to them as appropriate. Just online, my number is 843-849-3191, dean@porterpartnersgroup.com, and we will send out emails as well.
Thanks, Dean. Matt, fantastic job. It was a pleasure having you today. To all of our attendees, I will be following up with everyone individually, and we will make sure that you all receive a copy of this pitch deck. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Gene. I appreciate being here with you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.